Hello to all astrology enthusiasts. In this video, we discuss the full moon in Libra, which occurred on April 13th, 2025, and concluded a rather interesting period that began back in October 2024 with a solar eclipse. So, what is important to consider first and foremost here? That we are closing certain programs that have already run their course and manifested during this period. And now we can see some of the outcomes and the results of our efforts since October 2024. I would like to remind you that the waning moon is in effect until April 27, 2025, which means we have 2 weeks to complete, finish, get rid of, and cleanse ourselves from certain situations, relationships, stories, and themes of this 6-month cycle. Well, the full moon in Libra occurred at 03:22 a.m. in the 23rd and 24th degrees of Libra. And now we will discuss in detail how it plays out and manifests in our lives, through which situations, what energies it brings, and naturally how to ground these energies. I remind you that the full moon is first and foremost the peak of the lunar cycle. It is a moment of opposition between the moon and the sun. And the sun illuminates for us some real events happening in our lives. And during the full moon, our emotions, some internal processes, sensations, they reach a certain vulnerability, they reach a certain culmination, completion. That is, this is a time when we become aware of many things. We receive the manifested results of those initiatives, those efforts that were set during the new moon. The only thing to consider is that on October 2nd, we had a solar eclipse, which is a powerful astronomical event that amplifies the energies of the new moon many times over and sets very long-term programs. That is, these are not programs of a 6-month cycle. These are programs ranging from more than 2 years to 9 to 18.5 years, because it is a solar eclipse after all. It imposes a certain mark on some events and decisions in our lives, and at the same time opens up such long-term development programs that are also connected with the karmic tasks of our lives. Well, naturally, the key aspects of the full moon are first and foremost emotional tension. That is, our energy is being released, yes. It is fully revealed, making us more sensitive, more receptive. We inevitably experience awareness, clarity. We see the manifestation of something hidden that we hadn't noticed before, and this time becomes so clear in certain situations and relationships. Something that remained behind the scenes simply comes to the surface and demands our attention in order to close, complete, make a decision, get rid of, declutter. Here, the culmination of the processes in our lives occurs, and if we set certain intentions during the new moon, here we also receive certain results. That is, we see the first tangible, palpable results. Here, there is also a balance of opposites, because the moon and the sun are in opposition, and the full moon kind of equalizes the situation. It can lead to conflicts. It can create strong opposition. This can play out in any sphere, such as work or family. Here, there may be a confrontation between our emotions and our logic. But at the same time, the full moon has a serious energy of liberation. That is, these are very good days for getting rid of the unnecessary, for completing projects, for parting ways, for freeing oneself from toxic relationships, everything that no longer serves us in life. And now let's discuss the features of the full moon, specifically in the zodiac sign of Libra. In general, Libra is a sign that addresses and touches upon, activates themes of partnership, balance in our lives, justice, harmony, and such equality. And precisely the full moon in Libra brings these themes to the forefront. Libra is the sign of diplomacy. It's about relationships, the I-we dynamic, and aesthetics. Therefore, during this period, issues related to our personal business, connections, alliances, and relationships become particularly acute. Here we seek compromises. We want to establish this I-we balance. And the full moon always, especially in Libra, highlights the culmination, the climactic moments specifically in these areas. It leads us to awareness, to the completion of certain cycles. And in Libra, this can concern areas of marital relationships, certain contracts, agreements, legal proceedings, legal, judicial, and some partnerships. Here, the theme of social justice comes to the forefront. Situations may arise where agreements are violated, where there is a lack of equivalence, equality, and where issues of injustice come to light. And all of this requires us to reassess relationships, to adjust our interactions. In general, the energy of this period can push us towards very important decisions in love, business, and partnership projects. It forces us to choose between compromise and personal principles. And it's important to consider here that Libra is ruled by Venus. Accordingly, this manifests primarily in personal relationships, feelings, and financial matters. Questions of beauty, style, aesthetics, all these preferences are in the spotlight. And this is a very suitable time to realize which relationships and agreements truly matter and are harmonious in our lives, and which ones really require completion or adjustment. And here, it is also important to consider that the ruler of this full moon, Venus, is in retrograde motion during this period. And on the day of the full moon, it begins its stationary phase. That is, it solidifies certain thoughts that have become specific conclusions for us as a result of its retrograde period. This year, from March 1st to April 15th, Venus gave us the opportunity to rethink, review, and reassess our relationships, our feelings, emotions of a romantic nature, our money, financial matters, income, expenses, everything related to appearance, beauty, comfort. Venus directed us towards such a reevaluation to give us the opportunity to determine a completely new vector of development in these areas of life. As if to create a new formula, a new concept. In other words, what has been up until now no longer works. What we have been using in our relationships and in terms of, let's say, romance, romantic direction, or marital relationships, all of this no longer works. We want something different. Venus gave us the opportunity to think about it, to look at it from the outside, to determine what we want, our true desires, how we want it, and gave us the chance to reformat our feelings, reformat our income, earnings, and to reconsider our style, our attitude towards comfort. All of this happened during the retrograde phase. On April 15th, when Venus became fully on direct, it started moving forward. And during this period, we had situations where we returned and analyzed past relationships. We could return to former partners. We could reconsider our notions of pleasure, enjoyment, and harmony in our lives. And here, old unresolved issues in your relationships, in your partnerships, could resurface, which had previously been simply ignored. And now all of this has come to the surface. We have seen it all. We have rethought, reassessed, and made certain decisions for ourselves, whether we want to restore, for example, some relationships or agreements, or if we want to end, part ways, and get rid of some toxic relationships. And after the retrograde, Venus gives us the opportunity to start implementing these new, so to speak, conclusions and thought forms into our real life. And this process will continue until May. That is, a certain launch or manifestation will occur. And I remind you that there is what information about retrograde Venus and Venus in Aries on the channel. In addition, we will further discuss how Venus will behave after the retrograde. So take a look. Remember, determine in which areas of life this was happening for you from the 12 houses of the horoscope. Well, and here I also want to emphasize the degree of this full moon in Libra. Besides the ruler of this full moon, I remind you that it occurred at the 24th degree, and I want to show what we were moving from at the time of the solar eclipse and what we should have reached, considering Venus's retrograde and what should have fundamentally changed in our psychology during this period. On October 2nd, 2024, a solar eclipse affected the 10th degree of Libra. And here we saw a symbol that showed us the image of a boat, a canoe, moving through narrow straits. This is a Sabian symbol, and eventually it very successfully navigated these currents and reached a certain calm course. The 10th degree of Libra is about having achieved a certain balance after a challenging journey. It tells us that each of us has gone through certain internal and external crises, some emotional upheavals, and some difficult stages in life. And all of this depended on whether we have the ability to maintain control and how we apply this ability, whether we succumb to panic or continue to move forward, relying on our intuition, our reason, and our self-belief. So this symbol of the 10th degree of Libra showed us the idea or concept of a mature psyche at the moment of the solar eclipse. It's about how we learn to manage ourselves, whether we dissipate our energy in abrupt reactions or hysterics, or do we direct our energy precisely like that very paddle in a narrow channel. Here there is a lot about wisdom. It's about the kind of wisdom that is hard-earned through experience, about our internal compass that is no longer thrown off by anything. Neither external storms nor any whirlwinds from outside. In other words, it's about not running away from our difficulties, but being able to go through them while remaining very whole. And the potential of this degree, the potential of the energy of this degree lies precisely in such mental resilience, emotional maturity, and deep calmness, which, well, does not come by itself. It is kind of a certain reward for effort for our internal discipline. And the idea is that we become a support for ourselves. We become such a calm harbor where there are no doubts. That is the main idea of this 10th degree of Libra, was to learn self-control and self-management, which are precisely necessary for achieving such internal stability. And since it was a solar eclipse, meaning a new moon of very powerful force, with the black moon also involved, it was made very clear to us that a challenging period is opening up before us. And during this period, we need to develop certain competencies within ourselves. So on April 13th, when the full moon in Libra occurred, already at the 24th degree, we kind of close the first door, so to speak, of the completed first level. And what is the 24th degree about? Firstly, the symbol shows us the image of a butterfly that has grown a third wing on the left side. A very interesting symbol, and it's about an internal mutation, a subtle spiritual transformation that we should have reached during this period. And after this transformation, each of us has kind of gained new access to a new ability or form of perception that was not characteristic of us before. In general, the butterfly itself is, an image of completed transformation, an image of metamorphosis. Yes, when from a caterpillar through a cocoon, we have kind of arrived at a being that is capable of flying, that perceives the light, beautiful, spiritual surroundings. But here it's not just a butterfly, it has 3 wings. And this makes it special. It makes it unconventional, even a bit strange from the perspective of logic and nature. But this is where the deep meaning lies. This third wing is a metaphor for a new element in our psyche or in our soul, which initially may seem redundant, incomprehensible, but in fact symbolizes the emergence of an entirely new dimension of our experience. And another interesting point here is that it is located on the left side. That is, it clearly refers to our sensual, intuitive, instinctive part of each of us. It is connected with our heart, with our subconscious, with something irrational. And this ability, it may still be very unconscious, it is just awakening, seems very non-functional, very strange, but it is precisely this that will become a source of new personal strength in the future. This symbol clearly indicates that each of us, the soul of each of us, has touched something, completely new, an order of magnitude higher, in spirituality, something very subtle. And it is precisely this contact that activates in us a new response, a new sensitivity, some new reaction to our life in general. We might not yet know or understand what to do with it. But internally, we already sense that something is changing. And the potential of this degree, the 24th degree in Libra, lies precisely in such a profound restructuring of our attitude towards life, in the awakening of our talents, our intuition, our ability to hear, so to speak, read between the lines, sense something invisible, and trust not our mind, first and foremost, but our subtle feelings. That is, it's as if a situation where suddenly we start noticing things we hadn't seen before, or we begin to feel meanings in people, in events that, cannot be explained logically, but we understand that they truly work. So this is a phase where something new, unique is being born. And here it's important not to reject this third wing, even if it is unfamiliar. Here it's important to understand that it carries a gift that we are yet to unveil in the future. So this is the main outcome of this full moon, that we should reach after going through a certain sequence of events. And considering that the solar eclipse involved the black moon. Look back at these past 6 months, the previous 6 months. See what sequence of events you have gone through and what conclusions, what thought forms, what decisions came to you after going through these situations. Plus, consider that all the retrograde personal planets were helping us. This includes Mars, Venus, and Mercury. They were all in retrograde, and only now, after the 15th of April, can we, so to speak, take a breath. But let's keep in mind that in the 20s, within a week, the opposition of Mars and Pluto will repeat. We had it at the end of December 24th and in January 25th. That is, now we will have little tests to see what conclusions we have drawn, what lessons we have learned during this period. And naturally, by going through these tests, each of us will either move to a new level of development or go for a second round. I also want to draw attention to a number of aspects that were at play more during the full moon and undoubtedly had their impact. They provided a certain additional layer of energy to what is happening in our lives. Firstly, it is important to note here that Saturn was in conjunction at the time of the full moon, in conjunction with the North Karmic node of the future in the sign of Pisces. I remind you that Pisces is about the 12th house, and this includes the completion of very global life cycles for each of us. And here this conjunction, by the way, the aspect of conjunction always gives a series of events. We will take that into account. So it gives very real, fateful turns where we are called to take on new responsibility for our spiritual growth. After all, Pisces is also about spirituality. For our intuitive decisions that we have come to, for themes of creativity and creative potential, or for themes of serving other people. This may manifest as a forced departure from the previous path, the life path. It could be the loss of some former structure. This could involve work, relationships, or simply beliefs. When we start building a new life, but it is not based on fear or control, it should be based on trust, on meaning, on a very subtle feeling of where our soul is leading us. And here, situations may arise where one needs or has to learn to let go, to forgive, to trust this flow of life while not losing boundaries, not losing maturity. Saturn demands seriousness from us. It requires us to be systematic, even in what seems very irrational. This could be a decision to change careers to something more meaningful, or to embark on a long journey in art, medicine, psychology, charity, or psychotherapy, ultimately. If we are talking about doing personal psychological work, we may feel that the previous path no longer works. You have to build everything from scratch. You have to develop your own inner core. And it no longer depends on external factors. It is very subtle and deeply personal. In other words, it's a real encounter with our purpose. But it doesn't manifest as some kind of fame. It manifests as silence, honesty with oneself, and acceptance of this life task. Another aspect that works in the background during the full moon is the Sun in Aries, in a square with Mars in Cancer. A disharmonious aspect, but it contains a certain potential and it can create bursts of irritation. It can give us conflicts in family matters, at work, in personal relationships. Here, our impulsive desire sits to act is precisely what clashes. Our emotional vulnerability, after all, the zodiac sign Cancer, Mars in Cancer feels uncomfortable, but nevertheless, it provides emotional involvement. That is, with this aspect, we want to break through, but we constantly encounter emotional blocks, some grievances, some fears, some resistance from close people. Especially, we interact very acutely with all of this, particularly if we also feel unprotected. Here, situations are possible when someone, for example, tries to insist on their own way. This is the Sun in Aries. And someone else, for instance, in a relationship resorts to feeling hurt or passive aggression or avoids direct conflict. This is precisely Mars in Cancer. And this aspect can also provoke an internal conflict between our desire to be strong, assertive, and the need to care, be gentle, and stay in the comfort zone. In reality, this might look like a quarrel at home due to overworking, for example, or because of ignoring your partner's feelings. There might be tension between parents and children. There could be outbursts of anger due to some accumulated tension, fatigue. There might be situations of conflict between your ambitions and at the same time the need to feel safe. That is, the potential of this aspect lies in learning how to act without destroying, but rather how to integrate these impulses of the environment into our relationships, into our interactions, where there are also the emotions of other people. Another cool, interesting aspect here we have at the time of the full moon is the planet Neptune, which has been in Aries since the end of March. It has opened a very interesting long-term cycle, which we will discuss further in other videos on the channel. Nevertheless, at the time of the full moon, Neptune in Aries makes 6 harmonious aspects and creates an absolutely inspiring, completely interesting state that we have not experienced before. And it gives us such practical situations where our dreams become a real plan for our lives. Intuition becomes a very effective tool for making a breakthrough in your life. A moment when suddenly we can decide on very bold, for example, creative steps. We can launch some initiatives, projects that have been maturing within us for a long time. We can find very original ways to connect the spiritual and the material. That is, these harmonious aspects give us the feeling that something is guiding us. The right people appear at the right time. The pieces of certain situations come together. Our inner voice, it suggests not just what we feel, but it gives us a hint on where to move, what we need to do to reach a new level. This could be the creation of a product, a service. There can be insights here. There can be important decisions made about moving. And all of this is based on a very subtle feeling that this is my path. Or there can be situations where we immerse ourselves in certain practices, spiritual practices that give us concrete results. This could be concepts of some art therapies, breathing techniques, participation in some trainings, retreats. And here, too, certain information can be revealed and unpacked, which kind of guides us, and it activates our aspiration for freedom and gives us the opportunity to connect our intentions with reality, to materialize it all. This is the kind of interesting aspect Neptune gives us, forming harmonious interactions with different planets at the time of the full moon in Libra. Another interesting aspect during the full moon in Libra is the planet Uranus in Taurus, which is in sextile with various planets, and brings us very unexpected, but in very positive changes and renewals. In general, Uranus is about unpredictability, about a certain swiftness. And here, the aspects, considering that these are sextiles, are an energy that needs to be captured and attracted. They will create situations for us where these sudden changes do not bring chaos, but provide us with concrete opportunities to improve our financial situation, lifestyle, stability, and our relationships, especially if we are internally ready and willing to be very flexible. This could manifest as an unexpected chance to earn in a non-standard way, or to make our life schedule, work schedule more free, or to master some technology that simplifies routine. And this can be a very unexpected discovery, or to move to a place where life is simpler, cheaper, more pleasant. And these sextile aspects with Uranus give us a chance to introduce smart or progressive updates into our stable structure, to automate some household tasks, change our diet, restructure a business according to new standards, all without destroying the foundation. That is, it can also be some creative inspiration, a desire to update your body, wardrobe, style, home, or income system. Because Uranus is still in Taurus, and here everything happens through very practical but unconventional steps. A time when the familiar can remain part of our lives, but become more convenient, more modern, more enjoyable due to very precise and timely changes. These are the things Uranus in Taurus can provide, being in sextiles with other planets. Well, in any case, I wish you to use the energy of the full moon in Libra. It's to your advantage, undoubtedly. Subscribe, like, and share this video. And in the next video, we will explore how the full moon in Libra will work for each of the 12 zodiac signs. See you